The engineers, or space jockeys, are one of the most mysterious alien races not only in the Alien franchise, but also in science fiction in general. Although they were conceived over 40 years ago, and numerous films featuring them have been released over the years, very little information is available about them. Ridley Scott, the creator of the franchise, has been slow to reveal details about the engineer race. There is almost nothing about them in the canonical films. However, in deleted scenes, original scripts, and concept art by artists who worked on the franchise, the history and characteristics of the engineers are much more extensively revealed, showcasing them as a truly amazing race. In this video, we will explore who the engineers were, how they are connected to the xenomorphs and humans, and what might happen to them next. What do the engineers look like? Engineers appeared as extremely pale humanoids. They are easily distinguishable from humans by their lack of hair, high foreheads, raised eyebrows, and very tall stature. Veins are visible under their skin, and they have black eyes. Although some fossilized remains indicate that engineers could reach 4.5 meters in height, the common belief is that their average height was around 2.7 meters. Their musculature is very similar to human musculature. They also seem to be extremely strong and resilient, considering the fact that the last engineer effortlessly killed the people accompanying Peter Weyland and was impervious to gunfire at close range. However, this engineer was equipped with a biomechanical suit, which likely also enhanced his strength and durability. Interestingly, in the comic Predator, Fire and Stone, in a fight between an experienced Predator and an engineer, the latter proves to be much stronger and dominates the battle, deflecting a plasma charge and severely wounding the Predator, forcing him to rely on stealth, equipment, and human assistance to defeat the engineer. The lifespan of engineers could originally have been about 150 years, but it is likely that the elders of this race lived much longer, up to hundreds of thousands of years. Homeworld and early era of their civilization. It is unknown exactly how the engineers themselves appeared, but they are an ancient race that built their civilization long before humans appeared. The engineers' native planet is presumably called Diamond, where they constructed their highly advanced society. The engineers achieved impressive advancements. They were extremely advanced in genetic engineering and built their own spacecraft, such as the huge Black Ship and Juggernaut-class ships. However, some speculate that the engineers' technologies were not their own, but rather based on the technologies of beings larger than themselves. Hence the presence of traces of much larger engineers found on LV-426. Although little is known about the engineers, it has been shown that they demonstrate advanced forms of culture existing in their society, such as language, visual arts, music, and clothing. Music, in particular, was an important aspect of their culture, and a special instrument, similar to a flute, was used to control various technological devices. Little is known about the society of the engineers, but it likely had a caste system. Although this is purely speculative, Elizabeth Shaw proposed the theory that female engineers took on a leadership role, while males became soldiers, craftsmen, and philosophers. Moreover, males and females were incredibly similar to each other, and the reproduction of engineers did not occur as it does with humans. Women did not give birth to men, but reproduction was handled by special beings, something like queens. However, some disaster befell the engineer race, either a failed scientific experiment or a cataclysm, causing the queens to stop giving birth, and the entire race was on the brink of extinction. How the engineers discovered or created the xenomorphs. To save their civilization and regain the ability to reproduce new generations, the engineers launched exploratory expeditions to different corners of the universe in search of other life forms. They hoped to find something that could lead to a solution to their problem, Thus, the engineers encountered a planet where a xenomorph hive was located. However, these were not yet the xenomorphs as we know them today, but their ancestors, a proto-version. The engineers began to study these beings, but as usual, even the xenomorph ancestor proved dangerous and attacked one of the engineers, infecting him. From this engineer, a new creature burst forth, the Deacon, which resembled a xenomorph much more closely. After this, the engineers decided to study the new creature that emerged from the fusion of the xenomorph and the engineer. It turned out that the blood of the Deacon was unique. When it entered a living organism, it copied its DNA and, mixing with it, created a new life form. The engineers saw in this substance a possibility for preserving their race. Perhaps the blood of the Deacon would allow them to create new engineers, albeit slightly differently, but still better than complete extinction. The engineers envisioned a large-scale project, for which they started searching for planets suitable for the genesis of life. How the engineers tried to save their race and created humanity. Using the blood of the Deacon, the engineers literally began creating life on different planets. They initiated the evolutionary process on at least 10 worlds. The algorithm was simple. An engineer volunteer would take a dose of Deacon's blood, resulting in him disintegrating into the smallest particles, with which the samples of his altered DNA entered the biosphere of the planet. These particles launched and accelerated the evolutionary process that led to the emergence of intelligent life, creating humanoid races similar to the engineers themselves. According to the movie Prometheus, this is how life on our planet Earth originated. Another such planet, apparently, was Planet 4, shown in the movie Alien Covenant. Many viewers thought that the inhabitants of Planet 4 were the engineers themselves. However, they differed in many ways. For example, the inhabitants of Planet 4 were less perfect, and their society was more primitive. Interestingly, there is a popular and convincing theory that the prototype for life on Earth was not even an engineer, but one of the inhabitants of Planet 4, similar to an engineer. In that scene from Prometheus, there are two alien beings, one much older and more majestic. This could be an elder of the true engineers, and the other, younger. This could be an inhabitant of Planet 4. However, it soon turned out that the newly created races were too different from their progenitors and therefore could not be considered as one people, and did not continue the civilization of the engineers. Earthlings, in particular, became mired in hatred, wars, and self-destruction, which the engineers greatly disapproved of. So much so that they decided to destroy their creation. How the engineers decided to destroy humanity but did not succeed. Throughout the human history, the engineers regularly visited Earth to guide and teach their children, humans. They shared knowledge, fostered technological progress, and directed scientific thought. However, humanity's moral imperfections soon became apparent to their creators, and the engineers deemed their experiment a failure. Seeing great potential in humans and fearing that one day we, venturing into space and achieving impressive progress, might become a universal threat to all living things, the engineers decided to destroy life on Earth. For this purpose, they planned to use the very xenomorphs they once discovered. The Deacon, which had been the basis of their research, had eventually died, but had left behind an egg with a face hugger. Based on this egg, the engineers learned to create even more such creatures and turned them into a perfect weapon. With this weapon, the engineers planned to destroy humanity, and to ensure the mission's success, they additionally developed, based on the same Deacon, a special pathogen capable of destroying all living things. But something went wrong for the engineers. A force majeure occurred on the dispatched ships, resulting in the death of most of the crew, and the ships never reached Earth. What exactly happened remains unknown, but it was likely due to an internal conflict within the society of the engineers. It is probable that not all members of their society wished for the destruction of humans, and as a result of the internal conflict, the party advocating for the preservation of life on Earth prevailed. what happened next with the engineers? Humanity then entered the game, but not directly. It was through the artificial intelligence developed by them, the android David, who became autonomous after his restrictions were lifted. David became interested in the experiments of the engineers and wanted to learn more about them. To do this, the android traveled to that very planet 4, where another race created by the engineers in their likeness lived. But David did not want to befriend them. His goal was to destroy the inhabitants of Planet 4 because he considered them an imperfect form of life. David released a pathogen found on the engineers' ship onto the planet, and the substance did its job, destroying the civilization on Planet 4. Interestingly, many believe that David destroyed the home planet of the engineers, but this is incorrect. The destroyed civilization was just one of the children of the engineers, much like humans. However, some of the local inhabitants managed to survive, and David began experimenting on them. He also used the human woman, Elizabeth Shaw, with whom he traveled, as a subject of his experiments, eventually transforming her into something similar to an engineer queen. But she died. Eventually, David managed to develop a new, more perfect form of xenomorph, but to spread it, the android needed living carriers. He lured a human spaceship to Planet 4, took it over, and left the planet, continuing his journey. But after his disappearance, the real engineers also visited Planet 4, responding to the distress signal issued by the planet's inhabitants when David was destroying them. They discovered the traces of David's experiments there, and it's unlikely they liked what they saw. Thus, a future conflict between David and the engineers, whom he wants to destroy, seems likely in the franchise's future. I would watch a continuation with such a plot. What about you? And that's all for me. If you liked this video, don't forget to rate it, subscribe to the channel, and click the bell icon. Your engagement is the best reward for me. Thank you for your attention. See you soon. Goodbye.